The wind-riding chariot hovered silently amid the frozen wasteland, its white radiance cutting through the deathly stillness like a blade. Beneath the calm exterior, however, invisible spatial tears lay scattered through the void, silent, lethal, and waiting. One wrong step, one misjudgment, and even a nascent soul cultivator would vanish without a trace. Yet Han Li stood unmoved at the prow of the chariot, his gaze cold and unwavering, as if the dangers hidden within space itself were nothing more than obstacles already accounted for. To him, this was not recklessness. It was certainty. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. As Han Li silently followed the flying squirrel tracking Elder Zhong of the Ghost Spirit Sect, the Ghost Spirit Sect Master's party crossed a towering mountain range and finally entered a vast basin. The basin was perpetually shrouded in dimness and damp air. Puddles of muddy water, large and small, dotted the ground like scattered wounds upon the earth, turning every step into an ordeal. Though the cultivators employed minor spell techniques to repel the filth clinging to their robes, their pace was nonetheless forced to slow to a crawl. Despite the discomfort, not a single complaint was voiced. After scaling the enormous mountain, they had gained a commanding view of the land beyond, and it was then that they first beheld the colossal altar, standing at the very heart of the basin. Since entering Devilfall Valley, this was the first intact structure they had encountered. That fact alone made its extraordinariness self-evident. Moreover, it was almost certain that this altar bore a connection to the spirit ether garden itself. With anticipation burning in their hearts, Wei Wuya and the Ghost Spirit Sect cultivators pressed onward, dragging their feet through the mire despite their slowed progress. It was not that they had failed to consider flying above the ground. However, the moment they attempted to do so, a bolt of crimson lightning nearly struck them down. Evidently, the closer one drew to the basin's center, the more ferocious the surrounding restrictions became enough to extinguish any further thought of testing them. After trudging through the swamp for half a day, the group finally reached a position where only dense shrubbery separated them from the altar. Even from afar, its sheer enormity was unmistakable. The altar had been carved entirely from pale mountain stone, its massive tiers stacked one upon another like steps leading to the heavens. It soared skyward for more than a kilometer, an awe-inspiring and oppressive presence. Yet due to its immense height and the lingering distance, its base remained obscured from view. Wei Wuya strode through the murky waters as though gliding across a calm surface. A faint green radiance enveloped his body, allowing him to move with effortless grace. He spoke calmly. "At most 4 hours remain before we reach it. Sect Master Wang, now that we are this close, my curiosity regarding the spirit ether garden has grown rather strong." Wang Tiansheng smiled faintly and replied with casual ease, "Brother Wei, there is no need to rush. When the time comes, I will naturally explain everything." Wei Wuya nodded about to inquire further, when suddenly a flash of green light erupted from the disciple walking at the very front. Before anyone could react, the man was violently flung backward. His head separated cleanly from his neck, followed instantly by his torso, both splashing heavily into the foul waters below. Spatial tear. Wang Tiansheng's expression changed drastically the moment he cried out. Wei Wuya and Wang Tiangu's faces also darkened with solemnity. Though neither Wei Wuya nor Wang Tiangu knew the true depths of Wang Tiansheng's schemes, their journey thus far had been too smooth. They had unconsciously grown lax. Now, with a spatial tear suddenly appearing before them, their hearts could not help but tremble. The remaining 3 Ghost Spirit Sect disciples turned deathly pale, and the entire party came to an abrupt halt. Wang Tiansheng stared at the mangled corpse, his expression flickering with uncertainty. At that moment, Wei Wuya closed his eyes and extended his spiritual sense in all directions. After a brief scan, he opened them again, shaking his head impassively. "This won't do. The spatial tears are far too small to be detected through spiritual sense." Upon hearing this, Wang Tiangu flicked his fingers repeatedly. 5 fireballs shot forward in rapid succession. 3 vanished without a trace, while the remaining 2 detonated upon striking the ground, blasting open 2 deep craters. The tear is small, Wang Tiangu said lightly and slightly slanted. We should be able to skirt around it. Wang Tiansheng's voice turned grim. Even if this one is small, who can say how many more await us ahead? We do not have lives to spare. According to what I know, there should be no spatial tiers blocking this route at all. Could it be that that person concealed something from me? Wei Wuya's expression shifted subtly, though he remained silent. Wang Tiangu glanced toward the distant altar, then back at the corpse on the ground, confusion evident on his face. Then what should we do? Sect Master. Wang Tiansheng frowned deeply and cast a glance toward the sky, remaining silent for a long moment. Finally, he released a long sigh. I had intended to wait until we reached the altar before revealing anything, he said slowly. But now I have no choice. I will tell you everything. Wei Wuya and the others exchanged uneasy glances. With a flourish of his sleeve, Wang Tiansheng released a streak of silver light. A plain scroll appeared in his hand about a meter in length, shimmering faintly. That is, Wang Tiangu couldn't help but cry out. Wang Tiansheng chuckled softly. Of course you recognize it. You were the one who gave it to me. Everything I know about the Spirit Ether Garden comes from this scroll. Wang Tiang froze in shock. This was none other than the portrait of Master Kangkun, once hidden within his secret lair on the Mulan Plains. Wang Tiansheng tossed the scroll into the air, where it hovered within a sphere of light. Forming an incantation seal, he pointed sharply. With a crackling sound, the scroll unfurled, revealing the image of a scholarly man in Confucian robes, a sword strapped to his back, gazing skyward from within the painting. Wang Tiangu and the others stared wide-eyed. Yet no matter how long they observed, they sensed nothing unusual. Only when Wei Wuya swept his spiritual sense across the portrait did his expression change, a trace of astonishment flickering across his face. Wang Tiansheng noticed immediately. As expected of a late nascent soul cultivator, fellow Taoist, Wei uncovered its secret quite swiftly. I myself only noticed its peculiarity after cultivating a particular secret technique. It is nothing remarkable, Wei Wuya replied slowly. It resembles a spatial pocket magic tool I encountered long ago. Had fellow Taoist Wang not mentioned it, I might not have discovered it so easily. Wang Tiansheng smiled, asking no further questions. Raising his hand, he released a black spell seal that shot toward the scroll. He snorted coldly. Are you still unwilling to come out? Or must I force you with devil fire? The others were startled, their faces filled with confusion. Even Wei Wuya raised his brow, a hint of bewilderment flashing across his face. Then something inconceivable occurred. A man's voice rang clearly from within the scroll. Isn't this earlier than we agreed? Why summon me before reaching the altar? And before so many people at that, are you attempting to nullify our deal? Silver light surged as the scholarly man in the portrait turned around, revealing the face of a middle-aged man with long facial hair. His expression was distinctly displeased. The remaining ghost spirit sect disciples were utterly stunned. Wang Tiangu stood frozen, jaw slack with disbelief. Wei Wuya, after a brief moment of shock, quickly regained his composure, studying the portrait with a contemplative gaze. Wang Tiansheng snorted. Did I not ask repeatedly whether the route you provided was absolutely safe? An invisible spatial tear lay here, and it claimed the life of my sect disciple. When I passed through this place, it was perfectly safe, the portrait retorted sharply. How could such a problem arise now? Then explain this. Wang Tiansheng gestured coldly toward the corpse lying beside the invisible tear. The portrait fell silent. After muttering to himself, the image faded away. In its place, an azure curtain of light appeared. Moments later, a sphere of green light shot forth from the curtain and transformed into the silhouette of the scholarly man. His form was hazy and insubstantial, as though woven entirely from light so faint it seemed a single breath might scatter it. Wang Tiangu swallowed dryly and asked in shock, "How should we address you? Could you truly be Master Kangkun? How did you preserve your soul beyond your lifespan?" The time I can manifest is limited, the scholarly man replied indifferently. If you have questions, direct them to your sect master. I will examine the spatial tear. Turning toward the tear, he frowned slightly and expelled a ball of grey light from his mouth. Bang! The grey light was instantly swallowed by the tear. The scholarly man stared momentarily taken aback. How strange, he murmured. His surprise soon faded. There were no spatial tears here in the past. This must be a rare newly formed anomaly. There is no need for excessive concern, mere coincidence. He paused briefly. I will return now. With a soft whoosh, his figure dissipated. The green light rushed back into the scroll as though unwilling to linger in the outside world even a moment longer. The scholarly man's silhouette vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving everyone present stunned. Wei Wuya paused briefly before speaking. Sect Master Wang is that individual truly Master Kangkun. From what I can see, only a trace of his essence remains. No matter how terrifying he may have been in the past, he poses little threat now. Was he the one who informed you about the Spirit Ether Garden? Upon learning that the spatial tear was newly formed, Wang Tiansheng's tense expression finally eased. Turning to Wei Wuya, he replied calmly, in a sense, he both is Master Kangkun and is not. And yes, everything we know about the Spirit Ether Garden came from him. What do you mean? There's no need to cloak it in mystery, Wei Wuya said impatiently. Wang Tiansheng explained indifferently, Brother Wei misunderstands. What you saw was the remnant soul of one of Master Kangkun's incarnations. Long ago, when that incarnation explored Devilfall Valley, it was destroyed by a restriction. Master Kangkun then used a soul-nurturing technique to refine the remaining fragment into a scroll-type magic tool so it could recover slowly. However, the true Master Kangkun perished countless years ago. With no original soul to return to this incarnation, gradually gained independence. It wouldn't be strange to say that it has become an entirely different being. Wei Wuya's eyes flickered with surprise. Wang Tianyu, meanwhile, pursed his lips and let out a bitter chuckle. Whether from regret at not uncovering the scroll's secret earlier, or from disillusionment with his former excitement was unclear. Wei Wuya nodded and said coldly, So you reached an agreement with that soul remnant, and it revealed the Spirit Ether Garden to you. That matter is irrelevant to me. I care only about entering the garden itself. At my age, my sole concern is advancing to the deity transformation stage and ascending to the spirit realm. Brother Wei is indeed a sensible man. That is for the best, Wang Tiansheng said with a smile. Since the spatial tear was merely an anomaly, let us continue. He gestured to one of the disciples to lead the way. The disciple's face turned pale, but he forced himself onward, carefully skirting around the invisible spatial tear. Wei Wuya gradually quickened his pace, and the remaining ghost spirit sect disciples followed, all pressing toward the colossal altar looming in the distance. Manmei, within a glacial region layered thick with frost, Han Li lifted his head and gazed at the crimson glow overhead. Turning to Violet Spirit, he said calmly, What's going on? Your flying squirrel has lost control. Behind them stretched a ravine of ice over 200 meters wide, one they had crossed to reach the depths of the An Valley. All around lay a frozen world of ice and snow battered by bone-piercing winds. Yet Han Li's azure robes fluttered not at all, as if the bitter cold held no authority over him. I don't know, Violet Spirit replied with a deep frown. It was perfectly fine outside. But the moment it crossed the ravine, it suddenly went berserk. I recalled it immediately before anything happened, but even inside the spirit beast pouch, it's still in a state of frenzy. Han Li murmured to himself, then abruptly slapped his storage pouch. A small swarm of gold-devouring beetles burst forth, buzzing as they gathered into a compact cloud above his head, then fell completely still. With a thought, he recalled them just as swiftly. Stroking his chin, Han Li's gaze flickered. He struck another storage pouch, releasing a streak of black light that circled above him once before dropping to hover a meter in front of him. The light dissipated, revealing a tiny black monkey, no more than several inches tall, the weeping soul beast. The creature yawned, blinking sluggishly at Han Li as if freshly awakened. Han Li studied it for a long moment. Then, with a sweep of his sleeve, a surge of azure light flashed, and the weeping soul beast vanished. After pondering briefly, Han Li turned to Violet Spirit, resolve clear in his eyes. Since you've lost control of your flying squirrel, I'll have to track the ghost spirit sect myself. Fortunately, now that we've entered the valley depths, we shouldn't be far behind them. I'll search for traces they left behind. Guard me for now. Hanley felt a sense of relief. The gold-devouring beetles and the weeping soul beast were unaffected by the valley's influence, hardly surprising, given that one was a top-tier exotic insect and the other a fearsome mutated beast. Naturally, Han Li had no way of knowing that Marquis Nanlong's eternal flight orioles were also unaffected, unlike the Mulan spirit birds or Violet Spirit's flying squirrel. The true reason lay buried deep within the valley, tied to a long-hidden secret. Violet Spirit bit her lip and said helplessly, "Then we can only rely on Brother Han." Han Li nodded and sat down cross-legged. As he closed his eyes, brilliant light radiated from his body, strands of qi drifting faintly through the air. Violet Spirit stood guard beside him, her clear eyes lingering on his calm, expressionless face. Truth be told, she harbored emotions toward Han Li that even she herself could not fully define. Calling them merely good friends felt insufficient. She still remembered the faint delight she'd felt when Han Li had been momentarily stunned upon seeing her true appearance. Yet she could not call herself his confidant either. Though they had endured countless trials together, Han Li had never truly opened his heart to her, always maintaining a subtle distance as if he had no intention of allowing their relationship to deepen. In fact, given Han Li's current status and cultivation, even if he were to propose marriage, she wasn't certain she would accept. Worse still, she had once inadvertently learned from Cultivator Song of the Drifting Cloud sect that Han Li already had a Dao companion, Nangongwan. The revelation left her inexplicably disappointed, as though something that should have belonged to her had been quietly taken away. Lost in thought, Violet Spirit continued to stare at Han Li, her mind drifting aimlessly. Unaware of any of this, Han Li had already spread his spiritual sense across a 50-kilometer radius in search of ghost spirit sect cultivators, but found nothing. He frowned, though he wasn't discouraged. Extending his spiritual sense further, he swept over 100 kilometers still, without result. After a moment's contemplation, Han Li tossed a spirit beast pouch into the air and formed an incantation seal, releasing over 1,000 gold-devouring beetles. Go! His eyes snapped open as he struck the swarm with an azure spell seal. The beetles buzzed loudly, scattering in all directions like a living net. Han Li closed his eyes once more, the light around him intensifying. Violet Spirit watched in alarm, completely unsure of what he had done. At that moment, Han Li, having reached the peak of the great development technique, forcefully split his spiritual sense into over 1,000 strands. Nearly all of them attached themselves to the gold-devouring beetles, leaving only a few strands behind to protect his body. Through these strands, Han Li could see through the beetles' eyes, though he could not sense cultivator auras. The swarm spread out, searching for any trace of human activity. Some beetles inevitably encountered spatial tears or became trapped in restrictions. Formless as spiritual sense was, this posed little danger. Whenever a beetle was destroyed, the attached strand would retreat back to Han Li, though occasionally a strand was lost or sealed. When that happened, Han Li decisively severed the connection. Each loss caused his complexion to pale slightly, but his spiritual sense was vast and resilient enough to recover swiftly. With 1,000 beetles scouring the skies, Han Li finally uncovered a trail corresponding to the ghost spirit sect's route. He immediately recalled the swarm. As the last beetle returned to its pouch, Han Li opened his eyes, a cold smile curving his lips. "We're moving. I've found their trail." Rising to his feet, Han Li transformed into a streak of azure light and shot into the sky. Violet Spirit's face lit up with joy as she hurriedly followed. Soon after, they appeared above a stretch of scattered stone. Han Li stared at a newly formed pit, his expression turning strange. "It seems this is one of the marked locations," he said calmly. "If I remember correctly, 2 such sites lead to the spirit kindle fruit. This is the perfect chance to catch up." With a flick of his sleeve, a sphere of white light flew out and landed 10 meters away, revealing the wind-riding chariot. With an unyielding tone, Han Li ordered, "We'll pursue them at full speed. You're far too slow on your own get-in. We need to fly several times faster than before if we want to catch them." Several times faster. Violet Spirit's expression changed drastically. "There are spatial tears everywhere in the valley. Isn't that far too dangerous?" "I am only doing this because I am certain it will succeed," Han Li replied with a faintly mysterious smile. He then added calmly, "Could it be that Lady Violet Spirit is unwilling to take any risks for the sake of the spirit kindle fruit?" Violet Spirit's clear eyes flickered briefly. Then she smiled sweetly and said, "From what I know of you, Brother Han would never take a risk unless he was absolutely confident. It seems you possess a secret technique that allows you to perceive invisible spatial tears. In that case, I shall respectfully follow your judgment." With a blur of motion, she stepped aboard the wind-riding chariot. Han Li cast her a glance, a trace of surprise flashing through his eyes, but he said nothing. With a thought, he urged the chariot forward. In the blink of an eye, it tore through the air as a streak of white light plunging straight into the passage ahead. Just as Han Li had predicted, it took less than half a day to traverse the desolate land. When he and Violet Spirit finally caught up, they discovered that Elder Zhong's party had run into trouble. Due to a moment of carelessness from one of the Ghost Spirit sect disciples, an ancient restriction had been triggered. The group was now fully occupied with fending for their lives. Thanks to Han Li's cautious nature and far-reaching spiritual sense, Elder Zhong failed to detect their presence. Instead, Han Li calmly observed the scene from afar, completely undetected. From the fluctuations of spiritual qi, Han Li could tell that the ancient restriction was not particularly powerful. With a mid-nascent soul cultivator like Elder Zhong present, the Ghost Spirit sect would not be trapped for long. However, even such a brief delay was more than enough. Han Li seized the opportunity without hesitation. He urged the wind-riding chariot onward, decisively steering away from the original route. Along the way, they smoothly avoided several spatial tears, rapidly leaving the Ghost Spirit sect far behind. Before long, the two arrived before a range of emerald green mountains shimmering faintly with spiritual light. Han Li's gaze sharpened. He ordered the wind-riding chariot to slow to a stop. "This should be the place," Violet Spirit said excitedly. "Do you see that mountain shaped like a flying bird? That's the sign." As she spoke, she instinctively glanced toward Han Li. In truth, although Violet Spirit claimed to trust him completely, her heart had been clenched tight when the chariot raced forward at terrifying speed. Yet to her astonishment, Han Li's chosen route had been perfectly safe. Not a single spatial tear or ancient restriction had been triggered. What she did not know was that Han Li himself felt a measure of relief. Though his bright sight spirit eyes allowed him to see through spatial tears, the fact that they had avoided activating any ancient restrictions was to some extent a matter of luck. With that thought, Han Li narrowed his eyes, fixing his gaze on the peculiar bird-shaped mountain in the distance. The direction indicated by the bird's beak should correspond to the final marker leading to the spirit kindle fruit. As Violet Spirit waited, she noticed Han Li deep in thought. After some hesitation, she suggested, "Brother Han, should we not set out immediately? How about destroying the mountain before we leave?" Han Li asked calmly. "According to the Jade Slip, the final mark should be located in a desert roughly 500 kilometers from this mountain. Is that correct?" "That's right," Violet Spirit replied. "What does Brother Han intend?" Han Li said evenly, "It's simple. Even if we destroy the mountain, they will immediately notice that the damage is recent and realize this was once a marker. Since the final location lies in the neighboring desert, it would only be a matter of time before they trace it. The only way to buy ourselves more time is to conceal the mountain with an illusion formation, making it appear entirely ordinary. That way they will overlook the sign altogether. Violet Spirit nodded thoughtfully. Your reasoning is sound, but setting up an illusion formation large enough to cover an entire mountain and strong enough to evade the spiritual sense of a nascent soul cultivator would be extremely difficult. Could it be that Brother Han is also proficient in illusion techniques? Hanley chuckled softly. I'm not, but I happen to know someone who is. With a casual wave of his sleeve, a streak of white light shot forth. In a brilliant flash, a graceful woman clad in white appeared before them. Greetings, Master. Silver Moon curtsied respectfully the moment she materialized. Who is she? Violet Spirit cried out in surprise. This is Silver Moon. Han Li replied vaguely. You may consider her one of my subordinates. He then pointed toward the mountain. Silver Moon, can you set up an illusion formation around it within a short time? Silver Moon replied respectfully. With Master's illusion formation tools and my own techniques, it should be possible. However, my illusions are not strong enough to reliably deceive the spiritual sense of a nascent soul cultivator. Furthermore, they will only last 2 days before dissipating. Hanley pondered briefly, then reached into his storage pouch and produced 2 glowing sets of formation tools. Handing them to Silver Moon, he said, That will suffice. Begin at once. Strength is secondary. 2 days will be enough. Yes, Master. Silver Moon accepted the tools and immediately set to work. At the same moment, Han Li's gaze turned cold as he stared at the bird-shaped mountain. He formed a seal with both hands, then raised one palm. An azure sword streak over 30 meters long burst forth, taking the form of a roaring flood dragon. It coiled once around the mountain before shooting back into his body. With a thunderous rumble, the bird-shaped mountain began to crumble. The head and wings collapsed instantly, reducing it to an unremarkable mass of stone. Violet Spirit stared in shock. She had always known her strength was far inferior to Han Li's, but witnessing such terrifying might unleashed without, even summoning a magic treasure, left her deeply shaken. She had heard rumors claiming Han Li stood second only to the 3 great Heavenly South cultivators, but she had always harbored doubts. After all, not long ago, he had merely been a core formation cultivator like herself. To rise to such fame so soon after entering the nascent soul stage had seemed implausible, something she attributed to luck and opportunism. Only now did she realize how wrong she had been. While Violet Spirit was still reeling, Silver Moon had already reached the mountain and swiftly laid down the formation tools. In the time it took to finish a meal, she was done. Wisps of white mist slowly rose, enveloping most of the mountain, leaving only its peak exposed. Then Silver Moon flew to the summit in a streak of silver light and exhaled a cloud of pink mist downward. As the mist spread, it faded almost instantly. And then something astonishing occurred. The space around the mountain warped and twisted. In the blink of an eye, the mountain vanished, entirely replaced by a lush, verdant forest. Hanley nodded in satisfaction. Thousands of kilometers away, deep within an underground hall, Marquis Nanlong and Lu Weiying sat cross-legged at opposite corners. Their magic treasures struck relentlessly at a radiant golden barrier whose light was steadily dimming. The Buddhist characters floating across the barrier had grown from grain-sized symbols to fist-sized sigils, drifting solemnly across its surface. Outside the barrier, a white wind dragon, a golden streak, 2 blue water pythons, and a dark green ring assaulted it without pause. Each impact caused the barrier to tremble violently, flashes of light rippling outward. By now, both Marquis Nanlong and Lu Weiying were deathly pale. They had been pouring magic power into their treasures without rest, even overdrawing their vitality. Inwardly, they cursed the terrifying resilience of the Sanctuary Guardian formation. Breaking it required nothing less than staking their lives. Yet the barrier itself had reached its limit. Grinding their teeth, the two persevered. After an indeterminate amount of time, a thunderous explosion shook the hall. Lu Weiying leapt to his feet, laughing wildly. It's broken. Finally, it's broken. The golden barrier and the talisman characters vanished in an instant. Marquis Nanlong's face lit up with joy. The two immediately turned their gazes toward the treasures and medicinal items laid bare beyond the shattered formation. Yet despite their excitement, neither moved at once. Their hearts pounded violently. Both men were far too cunning to act rashly at such a moment. That's all for today's content. See you in the next part. Support me by becoming a member. It will give me more motivation. Thank you so much.